breathe, take a deep breath. Many of us go through our lives and our moments of truth. And there are many, many moments of truth for an entrepreneur. And we forget to breathe. We just keep going and get all stressed. And suddenly we take this deep breath and it's like, oh, okay, I'm feeling better now. Of course you do. Your brain is getting all this oxygen that you didn't get. The second thing I would say is find the right team.
Welcome to A Founder's Life. I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more integrated and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Thanks, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. I'm excited today to be joined by Jorge Velasco. Jorge, thanks for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you for having me. I do appreciate it. I am Jorge Velasco. First and most importantly, I am the husband of Monica and the father of Ana Paula and Jorge. But I am also CEO and president of BR Printers. BR Printers is a printer and distributor of books, educational materials, as well as promotional and direct mail products in the U.S. We have 6 plants across the U.S., over 400 employees. And basically, I am in love with books, and I've been doing this for over 40 years now.
So talk to us a little bit about that journey, what your work has looked like up until now, and then a little more about what you're doing within the current business and how you're helping your customers.
Yes. So I come from a family of publishers. The accent might tell you that I am not from the U.S. I'm originally from Mexico, born and raised in Mexico City. My father was a publisher, and he was a publisher until the day he died, almost 11 years ago. So my first memories as a child was to have a book in my hands. And that carried on into my education and my university education. Even though I went and decided to be an economics major, I was always thinking, how am I going to get into the publishing or the book business, if you will? And my God, 40 years ago, I started working for a printing company, a very large printing company based in the U.S., still in Mexico. And from there, I've been doing a lot of things in print and in distribution, sales, customer service, operations, et cetera, et cetera. And, I think it's a mission when you think about books and you think what books do for everyone. If you love books and if you can be part of that supply chain, it's a dream come true. And I think that's my job is defined as that, is defined as something that I was able to capture that love for books into what I do on a daily basis.
Great. And in today's world, obviously the world of publishing has changed a lot in the 40 years you've been doing it. What have you done to really keep up with the times, reinvent yourselves? How are you looking today that you might not have looked, say, a decade ago?
First of all, I think there is an interesting, I won't call it misconception because there is some truth on it, that when the iPad came out, the whole book business started to have a decline, the print book business, that is. That was in fact correct for a while until COVID happened. So we had seen a decline in the last 10 years, or 10 years ago, we started to see a decline in the number of books that were printed and distributed. But then when COVID happened, there are 2 main events. One is the fact that, of course, kids were at home looking at screens all day long, taking classes, taking lessons, etc. And on the other side, that they discovered the printed product. They discovered the printed product through TikTok. And it was an incredible phenomenon where they started to read books. And when I say they, I'm talking 8 to 17, 18 years old. They started to read books among them as groups. And there are a lot of cases that have been written about this on why was that? Why is that suddenly they wanted to have the touch and feel of a book rather than continue to read on a screen? And for us, it was a big surprise. I was working at a different company at the time that was specialized in trade books, in fiction, nonfiction, that kind of thing. And one day I get a phone call from one of the big publishers in the US, from Simon & Schuster, their production head, and they say, we are going to need a reprint of several thousand books for an author called Colin Hoover. And I'm just like, who in the world is Colin Hoover? Well, Colin Hoover was one of these TikTok authors, if you will, that became very popular out of nowhere. And now that her books are printed in the hundreds of thousands, and there's even a movie or 2 movies from one of her books. So the point is that when we thought the book business was in decline, the book printing business was in decline, COVID basically put us back on the map. Same happened with education. I think that's important to point out. Education is the same thing. At least in the US, the scores, the math, reading, social studies scores of the students that went through COVID looking at the screens and not having the printed product went down, and they've been going down. So school districts realized that education is better in many cases when you have the printed product with you. And that's what we have seen in the last 5 years, an increase again in the number of books we print and that we distribute to a school district.
That's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. Good to hear books are recovering. I don't read very much, I'm sorry to say. I do listen to a lot of books. I'm a big Audible. I go through a lot of books, but I like to listen. And part of that is I'm a big runner, so I can go for a 2-hour run and listen to a book, or a 3-hour run. And, so I quite enjoy that. And to me, I can switch my brain off listening, although I'm sure it would be better for my brain if I actually read.
Well, I'm a firm believer that any way you consume the ideas and the books that authors put together, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the whole concept of books and what they do for us is not limited to the printed product. The concept is that ideas are shared, and any idea is shared. At the company and personally, we are big believers that we are part of a big supply chain that is we're stewards of the First Amendment in the United States, freedom of speech, because we print and we distribute any book. We are really not into deciding, if this book is the right book, if it has the right ideology of the CEO or the ownership of the company. Every book that we print, every book that we distribute has many ideas that might differ for what I like. So that is a very big part of what we do, is that we are protecting, or we're part of the protection of the First Amendment in the United States, which now more than ever is critical, in my opinion.
Makes sense. You gave us a little taster on what family looks like for you. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate because I have been married to Monica for 33 years. We met in Mexico in college. In my case, it was love at first sight. In her case, she didn't see me for like 6 months. And we've been moving around. We moved in Mexico several times. Then we moved to the States for the first time in 1999. That's where our daughter, Ana Paula, was born. Then we moved back to Mexico, and then we moved back permanently to the U.S. in 2003, where my son, Jorge Alexander, was born. Both of the kids, they are not kids anymore. They are young adults. They have great careers. My daughter is presently working for a large consulting firm on the political side. And at the same time, she's doing a master's degree in Columbia University in New York City. And my son, 1 year removed from college, he's been working at a large PR company for the past basically 2 years. So we are empty nesters, which allows us to travel a lot. That's a passion of ours. Monica, she's being a travel agent, and she's got a travel agency that she's been running for 20 years. She's celebrating her 20th year this year. So it's a good match. No kids at home, and a wife that is a travel agent, and what you do, right? We can work from anywhere in the world and spend time abroad as needed. No, so I'm very fortunate of having the family that I have.
I like it, love that, and I've got to say, love the travel agent side. I got to pay for my own travel. I don't get so lucky. And how does health look for you? And I always love with health to be whatever aspect, whether that be food, fitness, sleep, mental health. How does that look for you?
So if we had met, I would say, before COVID, you would have seen a totally different person, physically and probably mentally. Physically, before COVID, I was very much sitting down most of the day and doing some exercise, but not much. I was doing tennis, which I played during high school and before, but that was that. Then COVID happens, and you realize a lot of things in life. You start to think about mortality, and you start thinking about health in a different way. So the best decision I made during COVID, a little bit before COVID actually, was to buy a Peloton bike. And I've been a crazy Peloton rider for the past 7 years. Crazy meaning that I do it 5 or 6 times a week, 35, 45, 60 minutes. I have been at the Peloton studios in New York, and I have been at the Peloton studios in London, taking live classes, which is kind of a badge of honor if you're a Peloton crazy like I am. So that was part one. Part one is to create a habit of waking up early, which I always did, but now I wake up early so I can do my routine, which includes weights and some other things. And the second part is, I took care of my body in a better way. I was eating and drinking a lot of things that I shouldn't, or that I shouldn't in excess, if you will. And that changed during COVID. And then I was able to just keep going. And I'm very happy to where I am right now. I feel healthy. I know I'm healthy because the doctor says I'm healthy, but it's more how you feel at the end of the day. But the exercise, I think, is critical. When I travel, and I travel a lot for work, and as I said, for pleasure, I always try to find a hotel where I can either do it inside or that I can do it outside. I cannot run like you do. My knees would not allow it. But as you know, I have a home in Portugal. And when I go there, I have a bike, and I take long bike rides in the Algarve, which is a beautiful region in the south of that country. And that helps me also to clear my mind, to be outside, to just go wherever the road takes you. So I'm very, very fortunate that I'm able to do that to keep my regime.
That's great. And what do you like to do for fun, except for bike rides in the Algarve?
That's, a great question, in the sense that I'm a very simple guy in that matter. I think exercising is one, but I discovered building Lego models about 3 years ago as a stress reliever, 3 or 4 years ago. I was under a lot of stress at work, and the weekends were not doing what the weekends should do. So I wasn't able to get my mind off the things you have when you reach certain levels in management. And one day I was walking through a mall. I saw the Lego store, and they had this model of the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium. That's where Real Madrid plays, and 4,000 pieces. So I thought, well, that's, it's a Lego, right? Any kids can do Legos. So I took this box, and my God, it took me I'm going to say 3 months worth of weekends to get through it. And I realized how fun it was. Also, how it would just take my mind completely out of work and out of everything else. And since then, I've done, I'm going to say, 8 or 9 projects that, one of them is sitting over my right shoulder. It's Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And the big project that I have in front of me in November, Lego is releasing their biggest model yet, which is La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, commemorating the end of the construction. And it's going to be 12,500 pieces. I think that's one is going to bring me to my knees, but I'm very much looking forward to that. So I do that for fun. I read a lot, and I travel a lot. Travel is where most of the fun happens, anywhere in the world. And, it's a great way to get your mind off a lot of things when you're not sitting in your office like I am right now.
Nice. Now, if you're building a 12,500 piece Lego set, do you glue it or anything at some point so that it doesn't get damaged? Because that seems like a lot of work. And then it just takes somebody to knock it off a desk, or, some little kid to run through, and, that works.
So if you're a purist and you're going to keep it forever, the answer is yes. I mean, you have to, at some point after you're done, never before you're done. There are ways to glue it and to keep the pieces together, like a varnish, that kind of thing. I haven't done it. I don't know why. What I will tell you is, outside of my office, I have the rest of the stuff I have built, and they are a place that people cannot just come and knock them down. No. But, the other thing I will tell you is that there is a possibility that once you're done and you have them for a while, and these are expensive sets. I mean, they're not cheap by any stretch of imagination. So someone told me the other day, why don't you just, when you're ready, take it all apart and then donate it to a school or to someone so they can redo it themselves. And I was thinking, I don't know if I want to do that, but that's an option. But no, it is scary. I'll tell you, when you're moving it from one place to another, you're like, I need to be very careful. I don't want this to drop.
And so how does an integrated life look for you across your different aspects?
Integrated? Yeah, being very honest with you, as I have become older, I have started to balance my life a little more. And I said little more because I would be guilty if I say, my God, I'm totally balanced. I'm not, especially because of the job that I have and whatnot. I go back to travel. I think travel is what is balancing and integrating everything. It puts everything together, because Again, I'm very lucky that I can work from wherever I want to. So I can spend 1 or 2 weeks somewhere else, not in this office, and still be able to actively work and manage the business I manage. I have a great team, which is also part of the deal. And part of the balance is that if you have a great team that is well aligned with what the company wants to do and whatnot, then you have a way to do that. So my balance comes from, spending time with my family, spending time abroad with Monica, traveling, meeting new places, eating new foods, integrating into new cultures. I think if you are moving around and you decide to stay for a period of time in certain countries or towns or whatnot, the best you can do is to try to fully integrate into the culture rather than look for diasporas of Mexicans or diasporas of Americans or English or whatnot. No, if you find, the right people in places you go that are natives, that integration is so important and so much part of this whole concept of life that we are building for ourselves.
That's great. What's been a pivotal moment in your life?
It's going to sound corny, but it is not. I would say meeting Monica and getting married at the early age of 25 and she was 22. That was pivotal for us. That centered me and grounded me. Monica is a multilingual, multicultural woman. She was born in Trinidad and Tobago, grew up in Brazil, moved to Venezuela, then moved to the States, and then moved to Mexico. Her father was a hotel manager in the days of hotel managers living on site. So she lived in a hotel until she married me, which is a story for another day. So I was just a good old Mexican kid with a great background from a family perspective, but I didn't have the perspective of living abroad and speaking other languages. My dear wife speaks fluently 4 languages plus German. Her father was German, but her German is, she says this, and she will kill me if I say that she speaks fluent German, but that she speaks good German. But when you meet someone like her at an early age, it changes your world. It completely changed my world. She changed my world. So that was a pivotal moment in my personal life that drove us to where we are today, right? Not to be afraid of moving, not only city to city, but moving from country to country. It wasn't as hard as it is right now, the whole immigration concept for the reasons that I'm sure all your listeners understand. Yet it was still very hard for us to just, as they say in Mexico, burn the ships and move to the US. So without her, and again, go back to the pivotal moment, I don't think I would be where I am today. The second one I would say was at work. I would say the pivotal moment at work was when I found the right mentor that believed in me. I am completely blessed to have at least 3 mentors that I remember very well, and they still remember me, that changed my perspective of business. They changed the way I was working and the way I was looking at customers and the way I was looking at performance and discipline. And again, I know exactly who they are and they know who they are. And probably they are going to see this, 1 or 2 of them are going to see this and they are going to say, yeah, that's me, which drives me to the next point, which is we all have an opportunity to mentor someone. And I think it's a extraordinary opportunity to give and to give back, especially if you have had the gift of a good mentor.
That's so very true. And that does lead me to my next question. But before I ask that, I'm going to say a quick request. If you're enjoying these conversations, please click subscribe. And now on to the next question for you, which is, what's one piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
I was at a conference last Friday, leadership conference, and I was in a panel. And I got that same question. And the answer was, first of all, breathe. Take a deep breath. Many of us go through our lives and our moments of truth, and there are many, many moments of truth for an entrepreneur, and we forget to breathe. We just keep going and get all stressed, and suddenly we take this deep breath, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm feeling better now. Of course you do. Your brain is getting all this oxygen that you didn't get. And by the way, this is nothing that I learned. One of my mentors, who's the CEO of a very large company, he gave me that advice many years ago when I became COO of my past company. The second thing I would say is find the right team. Now, of course, entrepreneurs, we are individuals, right? We like individuality. We like to move by ourselves and to push our ideas and whatnot. I consider myself an entrepreneur. And the companies I have worked for allowed me to think and act as an entrepreneur. But the supporting cast that you put together for your endeavors, they have to share the entrepreneurship that you believe in. So finding a good team is absolutely necessary, and be aligned with them. Right. Another part that I said last week when I was participating here is that you need to find a way that you're not only aligned with them, but also when you start running bigger companies or your company becomes bigger, you have to make sure that even if you're the CEO or the COO or whatever your job title is that the people that are doing the work still look at you. And when you look at them, they feel that they are the only person in the room. Many times, especially now with Teams and this type of video calls and working from home and whatnot, we lose sight of the human side, that it's very easy for the other party to know that you're not paying attention. It's very simple. I mean, you start looking at another screen, or you're still looking down, or you take this thing and you start doing this thing. I think that's key, that you focus. If it's 30 seconds or 1 minute on your response to that person, if that person feels that you are connected, then he or she are going to go through walls for you, which is what we entrepreneurs love to do. We don't see the wall as an obstacle. We just see it as a little bump on the road. So those are the three things that come to mind, Leo, when we think about what advice for entrepreneurs listening to this call.
It's great advice. I think, the focus, I think breathing, breathing is an interesting one. And I've done a lot of breathing exercises I've learned over the last 10, 15 years, and meditation, things like that. And it's true. I mean, we don't breathe enough, and we certainly don't breathe deep enough. And, there was a great exercise I was taught a few years ago by a monk in India to like reset the system. And like, she was like, before a phone call, you should always do this, before a conversation, which I'm not saying I do always, but she was like, just 3 breaths. It's a slow breath in, a slow breath out at half the speed that you breathed in. You do that 3 times, and it is remarkably effective. I'm particularly stressed. That does do a great job of like resetting the nervous system.
I concur. Totally concur.
And how can people find you?
Jorge at brprinters.com. That's my email at work. I'm very good at responding to emails. And so if you do, please do so. I will be very happy to respond. As I mentioned, I think you have to pay forward what you have received. And if any of your followers want to have a chat about everything we discussed today, or other things about entrepreneurship and business or personal life, or they want to know where my wife is so they can, they can buy a trip from her, I can also provide that later on. So, but yeah, that's where I can be found.
Well, thank you. It was really lovely to chat.
It is the same. Thank you very much indeed.